All right, we are going to review adding and subtracting of integers. Remember, an integer is a positive or negative whole number. There's different rules here, and this is something that you need to be very efficient at as we work towards starting to solve equations. So if we're going to add integers, so for example, -5 plus 3. If you notice, the 5 is negative and the 3 is positive. Why the 3 is positive is because of this plus sign right in front of it. Okay, so technically we have a negative and a positive number that we're trying to combine. If you have opposite signs, you really need to subtract the numbers. Okay, so I have opposite signs. I have a -5 and a +3. So I'm actually going to take 5 minus 3, which is 2. Now, to determine the sign, I go back to the original problem. If I look at the numbers I was given a 5 and I was given a 3. Ignoring the negative and positive signs. Ignoring the negative and positive signs, which number is bigger, 5 or 3? Well, 5 is bigger, and 5 was negative, so therefore my answer is going to be negative. -5 plus 3 is actually -2. To show you this on a number line, okay, if I would start at -5 and I'm adding 3, when you add, you move to the right. So I move 1, 2, 3 to the right, and I wind up at -2. Let's do another example. 7 plus -5. Now, Ms. Hoff actually hates how this is written, but this could happen. Okay, we're adding a negative number. So technically I have 7, which is positive, and 5, which is negative. My signs are opposite, therefore I should subtract them. 7 minus 5 is 2. To determine my sign, I look at my original number 7 and 5 and decide which one is bigger. 7 is bigger. 7 does not have a sign in front of it, which means it is positive, which means my answer is positive. Now, if I'm going to subtract integers, I want to take 3 minus 7. I'm going to go through the same process, okay? My 3 is positive because there is not a sign in front of it. My 7 is negative, which means they are opposite signs, which tells me really to subtract. So I take 7 minus 3, which is 4. Now, look at your original numbers, 7 and 3. Which number is bigger? Ignoring the signs, 7 is bigger, 7 is negative, therefore my answer is -4. Okay, on a number line, I start at 3 and I'm subtracting 7. When you subtract, you move to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. -1, -2, -3, I wind up at -4. What if I went -7 minus 10? I'm subtracting, right? If I look at my two numbers, I have a -7 and a -10. In this case, we now have the same sign. And when I have that, I really want to add the digits together. So I really want to take 7 plus 10, which is 17. Now they have the same sign. What was the sign? It was negative. Therefore, my answer is going to be negative. Another example. 3 plus 12. 3 is positive. 12 is positive. That means they have the same sign. They have the same sign, so we're going to add them together. 3 plus 12 is 15. Both of those were positive in the beginning. Therefore, my answer is positive. Now, there are times you're going to have things written uniquely that are a little frustrating. -7 minus -5. 3 plus -7. negative 9 plus negative 16. I never want to see two signs right next to one another. When we get into solving equations, that's going to be very frustrating. So for the first example, subtracting a negative, two negatives right next to each other actually become positive. So these two right here are going to turn into one big plus sign. So you actually have negative 7 plus 5. Negative 7 and a positive 5 means you have opposite signs. Opposite signs tell you to subtract. So I'm going to take 7 minus 5, which is 2. I look at my original problem of 7 and 5, which number is bigger, which is 7. 7 is negative, meaning my answer needs to be negative 2. If we go to the middle problem, 3 plus negative 7. When you're adding a negative, I do not want you to have two signs right next to each other. I'd really like you to rewrite this as 3 minus 7. Excuse me. So now I have a 3 and I have a negative 7. Those are opposite signs. So I need to subtract. 7 minus 3, which is 4. Now to determine what sign my answer has, I have a 3 and a 7. 7 is bigger, 7 is negative, which means my answer needs to be a negative 4. The one on the very end, negative 9 plus negative 16. I don't want to add a negative, so I am going to write that as subtracting 16. Now I have negative 9 and negative 16. This one changes a little bit. They have the same sign, which means we need to add them together. 9 plus 16 is 25. Both of these are negative, therefore your answer is negative. The better you are at integers, adding and subtracting them, the better off you will be as we get into solving equations. Practice makes you better skilled and more efficient in your work.